We are at the Defence Academy in Shrivenham, and it's a kind of a tanky place. And of course, as ever, Sofie has magically appeared somehow.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't. You have a special skill. Liam Neeson is probably jealous of your special skill. It's far more useful than his.
Yeah, fair enough.
But anyway, so Defence Academy, they teach you things. It's not just a museum that you look at them. And they got this wonderful selection of track. Because, of course, the whole purpose of the tank, mobile firepower, is you got to get it from A to B. And tracks, the running gear, it's how you do it. And they got this lovely selection of all sorts: double pin, single pin, dry pins, live track, hydrogas suspension. Where do you want to start?
I think it's kind of cool. Let's take a look at the different tracks and their different features and where we might see these and want to use some compared to others.
Right, well, I guess we'll start off with one of the older ones. So this comes off a Challenger 1. It's basically, that sounds near to a Chieftain tank, so it makes no difference as near as I can tell. But you can see it's a single pin track,
okay,
which is usually a lighter duty than a dual pin.
When you mean duty, like compared to the heavy duty ones, in which application would single pin be advantageous over double?
Well, you'll usually see a single pin track on APCs more than anything else these days.
So literally lighter, like lighter vehicles.
Yes,
gotcha.
Yeah. Although certainly in the US we started going to double pin for our later versions of the M113, the later versions of the Bradley track, they were talking about doing double pin as well. But 1960s, single pin seemed to work. Rubber pads, of course, because you're running on roads and you get good grip this way, and as opposed to the Soviet track, which not quite so much. And then you start moving on. And you remember when we were in Aquino and you were live streaming the guys that had walked the track off?
Yeah.
And can you remember how they were spending forever getting those two pieces of track to mesh up when they're putting it back together again? Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is you can see that the track pins aren't round. And it took me forever to figure this out, because I said, why don't you have it connected? Why don't you just bash the end connector back in? And it was because they had to perfectly align the end connectors to the track in order to get the thing back in.
So the two track links had to be in the exact perfect position, or else you're not going to be able to fit
it wasn't happening. My God, it was annoying. And apparently the British have agreed with this, because if you look at the later version of the track pin, you'll see you see here, it's completely round.
Yeah.
So they have this safety cover here. And the actual circumference of it, the shape of it, is completely round. So it's a lot easier to hammer your end connector back in. But again, so you hammer the end connectors in. It's called walking the track. You kind of slowly bring it forward, bring it forward, bring it forward. Look, there's a loose end connector. You go over and you hammer away with the sledgehammer. And they were very clever with this, is they got this little gouge in here so that even if the end connector bolt starts coming loose, on an American tank the end connector starts coming off. With this thing, if the bolt is a little bit loose, absolutely nothing's going to happen to the end connector. So that's one of those things to be very jealous about of the British, together with the track tension system.
Because if that thing suddenly comes off, you're in trouble.
Yeah, again, this thing's flinging around. You're doing 40 miles an hour, let's say, which means that the track at the top run, on the return run, is doing 80 miles an hour. So if that goes flying off, you got this, this hunk of metal is going to do some pretty significant damage to your car when it hits you. Or to you.
Yeah.
Another neat feature, and in fairness, the American tank, you can kind of do this. The rubber pads, what happens if it's snowy and icy?
Right, you're going to go whoop.
You whoop, or in a tank, that's a very big whoop. you use a lower voice for that. So, look what you got on the back there. You got the grazzers.
Right, so these are going to provide a better grip in slipperier conditions.
They are. They're going to ruin your road, but hey, it's a war, whatever. Safety first.
That's right.
Safety first. So, you can see how this just kind of, if you put the one next to the other.
Yeah.
All you do is you just hammer the one out and you hammer the other one back in.
And you're good to go.
And you're good to go. That easy. It beats reversing center guards and things like that. Again, we got the Challenger end connector here. So you can see how this kind of interferes a little bit with the shape of the circle, how it meshes in. Genius design. I don't know why people didn't think about it before. And then you get to the lighter duty stuff, like from the Warrior, the CVRT, the Scorpions that you played around with up in Canada. These are the single pin tracks. There was a pin here a few minutes ago. I thought you have sort of a hexagonal profile. Don't know where it went. Oh well, no matter. And then of course you got the road wheels. Oh, here it is. So you can see that the pin is angled a little bit. And this is sort of a characteristic of a live track, that when you leave a live track, there's a little bit of tension on the bushings, so it tends to curl up against itself. Makes it a little bit easier to go around. But, I mean, compared to the size of yourself, I mean, you put your foot there, it's kind of like, you can see how big the wheels are on this.
Right, yeah. So in this one you see there's 2 road wheels next to each other for each.
Yeah, it's a pair. So obviously, I mean, you'd undo the bolts and you can replace one at a time, because one alone is going to be pretty damn heavy.
Right.
So you want to split up. These are very, very big wheels. But the British tank, the Challenger 2, they don't have torsion bar like most of the rest of the normal people do. And they have this piston system, the hydrogas suspension, which has its advantages. There are probably some disadvantages, like you got to push the gas in at the end, the nitrogen. I mean, you're asking from your background how much pressure it is, more than I can pump with a hand pump.
That's right.
And so the advantage though is there's no torsion bars. You remember those 2 torsion bars that we saw on the Leopard that are this thick? I mean, they're not thick, no, this thick. That means that you have that much less usable space inside the tank.
That's right.
And when every little inch counts, there's an argument for not going with that. So this is bolted purely on the outside. Seems to be very easy. If something goes wrong, you just undo the bolts, pull it off, you're done.
It'd be easier to replace the entire unit than to address trying to fix this one.
It very well would be in the field, yes. Because, I mean, you of course, here's the other thing in the field. You got pistons like this. Everything has to be absolutely dirt-free.
Right.
I mean, realistically, are you going to be able to take this apart and put it back together completely clean in the middle of a field, in the middle of a war?
And you have to be messing around with nitrogen at really high pressure in order to say this, like springs a leak or starts to not work, then you have to deal with things at high pressure as well out in the middle of the field.
Yes.
When you could just swap it out at your
let somebody else deal with the difficult bit. Yeah.
When you have a dual configuration like this with the road wheels, does one on the inside or the outside tend to wear first?
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't. Now, there is going to be the ones on the ends are going to wear most, because remember when you're turning the vehicle, you're basically twisting the vehicle against the ground, and the track is stuck to the ground. So at the very, very ends of the vehicle, the center guides are going to be biting against the rubber tires. So if you're going to get wear and gouges and so on, they will probably happen on the front of the last wheels first, and then the rest of them. But it's the inside or the outside, it's whichever one falls apart.
It's not quite like
first.
a car if they're out of balance and you get.
Oh God, I wouldn't even like to think about rotating the wheels on one of these. Okay, yeah, we've done 300 miles. Time to rotate all 7 road wheels on each side. 7 road wheel pairs, spin them around, take the one at the front left, put it back, take the one in the back right, put it on the front right. Oh, that would not go well. It was bad enough just changing the pads. I mean, these things wear out, and some of the pads, you can see this is bolted on. So if the pad wears down, you undo all the bolts and you replace it. It takes forever. It's just easier. Again, just swap the track, let somebody else deal with it.
Is there like when you have different materials for your rubber, does it come with like a guideline for your mileage in terms of how much you should operate the tank before you just say, let's replace it? Or would it be sort of an on-site, sort of an inspection?
Well, how do you do it on your car?
We take a look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what do you look against?
Well, I take Lincoln's head on a penny and I check it in between.
Oh, you are old school.
Yes, sir.
All right, so oftentimes there's a little wear mark that if the tread has gone down and touches the wear mark, you know it's time to change. Well, it's the same thing. There is a certain depth of rubber beyond which you realize it's time to change out the track.
So better DCI than try to keep track of how much you've operated it and how far you've gone. Rather, just take a look and see if it needs replacing.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, there is, after X many hundred miles, it's supposed to change the track because the track stretches. But the other thing you can do is, well, if it stretches, well, you remove a link. And then you keep going until you have to remove another link, and your tensioning arm won't go any further. That's a good sign that you got to change your track.
Gotcha.
So, and of course at the other end, if you're interested in mechanical items and application of force, you can see how the final drive, the power shaft, comes out here through the final drives to the sprocket, but it's there's a gear ratio, and you can see the force applies in 3 or 4 different locations all around the ring at the same time. And you remember the problems the Germans had with the final drives and so on? It's because they weren't designed to split the force over something that the teeth could hold. Although interestingly, the Germans are accused of, oh no, we didn't have herringbone designs on the spurs like the Sherman did. Well look, they're flat. So obviously there are other ways of skinning the cat. But yeah, that's your track. Anyway, do you have any questions?
I would just be see if there's even more variation. So here we have in the center the example with the Soviet. There's no rubber.
Right. There's no rubber. It's a dry pin track. It's a dead track. It's annoying as all hell. No lubrication. I mean, it has a service life generally shorter than that of a Western track. No rubber, but hey, who cares? There aren't so many roads there anyway. You do get a little bit better grip off road. You definitely get a bit better grip in the snow, which I guess is important in Russia. And it's a simple, heavy track, easy to cast, easy to manufacture, cheap to manufacture. That's probably also important in Russia. And right, so we're on our way to something a bit bigger. So we will see you then.
All right.